Isn't that kind of apropos of everything, Bloom? Whenever it clicks. Whenever it clicks. We'll just wait. Whenever it clicks. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Well, he didn't play much last week, so how much does Saquon Barkley play this week? It's part 1 of the week 2 preview here on the Audible, and Thursday Night Football is the Giants, and it is Washington. So we'll talk about all the Giants and what they did and didn't do against the Broncos and how that'll impact what they do against the Washington football team. But to me, it comes down to Barkley. Okay, they eased him back in. He got 10 carries. Does he get 10 again, or does he get 20, or somewhere in between, Bloom?
Yeah, that's the thing. And you wonder how much they were factoring in the Thursday game into how they handled Barkley in week 1.
Very much
with
so.
this idea of ramping him up. Now, if you drafted Barkley and you benched him, chances are you're happy that you did that. So that may make you more inclined to do it again. But I think at this point, even with Washington's defense, pretty tough defense, you're going to play Barkley, and Cecil, we get NFC East theater on Thursday night. So the most thrilling division from last year. I mean, these were some interesting games between the Giants and the football team, and we're all going to get to put the microscope looking at Daniel Jones. Of course, Sterling Shepard is someone that you're going to think about playing in PPR leagues, although, as you pointed out, Denver did a terrible job covering him, like, assignment-wise. So maybe that's what created his production more than Shepard, although Shepard looked good. Galladay, Slayton, I mean, Washington's not going to be that much easier than Denver. So I just think this is not an offense that we're looking for fantasy value right now. This is an offense that, like you said, it's Barkley. We'll see if Ingram comes back. I don't know. Again, the thrilling NFC East theater, or at least spiced up by Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, Taylor Heineke. The other side is more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Is Odds Bodkin says Taylor Heineke super flex stud. I believe that Heineke will outperform Daniel Jones. I don't get the Heineke hate. I mean, again, he's not perfect. No one's saying they've got something. It's the greatest thing ever, but it's not going to fall off that much. Is it the reputation of Fitzpatrick? Like that? Maybe that's a larger show, Bloom. Maybe
Right.
that truly is an on the couch episode. But for me, I'm like, yeah, they'll be fine. They got Gibson. They'll be fine. They got Terry McLaurin. They'll be fine. They'll be Logan Thomas. They'll be more than fine. And it's the Giants. You know that they want to stuff the run. You know that they're sound and stout and aggressive defensively. So how do Heineke and the Washington football team counteract that?
Well, Heineke, again, the evidence showing in his playoff game against Tampa Bay last year, a fine showing. The offense came alive when he came in last week, a fine showing. That perhaps this offense won't lose anything, even could gain something. And we don't know where Ryan Fitzpatrick, hey, that cliff comes for everybody sometime. So this is going to be an interesting thing. I think this is where, we'll call it national TV schedule, Luxies, that we get to watch Taylor Heineke closely in his first start this year for Washington. You're going to play Antonio Gibson. See, so what I'm watching here with Gibson is a costly fumble. Damian Harris, Antonio Gibson, these are guys that we're watching in week 2 to see, A, if their usage changed because of their costly fumble, which is more of a Harris thing than a Gibson thing, but also their confidence, ball security. Remember, Gibson is not a guy who has a ton of experience carrying the ball 20 plus times a game and being that important player for a team. So that's something I'm going to watch for his confidence level, ball security. We love Terry McLaurin now with Heineke. He had that spectacular play after Heineke came in. Logan Thomas getting the touchdown last week. So if he was your best option at tight end, he'll be your best option at tight end again. De'Ami Brown, and this is going to be a theme, Cease. Young receivers got the snaps, didn't have the production. Maybe we'll give them one more week. De'Ami Brown's probably the closest to that cut list anyway, but we want to be a little more patient with young players, especially rookies. So I'm looking forward to watching the Washington defense up close.
I'm looking forward to watching Washington win the ball and win the ball game, and say that fast. Watching
Washington.
Washington. I never knew.
I'm from Washington County, Pennsylvania.
Okay, all right. Let's get it on. It was Sunday. The Bengals and Chicago, and the Bengals side of things. First and foremost, you go, okay. Jamar Chase, Andy Dahl, Joe Burrow.
Right.
Guys, that's the other side. You guys do this up, do it again. And Joe Mixon, again, Bloom, with me and Mixon, it's like, Yeah, I know he's good. I know he's going to get a majority of those touches. I just don't know how long that will last. So hopefully it lasts through again and they keep going. If you're looking at T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, wanting to do just a little bit more. So how does that shake out this Sunday for the Bengals?
Yeah, this is a good second data point game on the Bengals because Minnesota looks like a team that might be in the last year of the Mike Zimmer era and kind of checking out.
Last half a year?
Yeah, maybe last part of a year. And Burrow looked good. They had a more balanced offense. They didn't. Burrow was sacked 5 times, but they didn't leave him hanging out to dry as often as they did last year. Now, Chicago's defense we think of as usually at least a middling to better half of the league defense, but the Rams didn't have any trouble with them. So with the Bears defense and Burrow, we're going to balance those out and see how we can recast. Of course, we're going to watch Minnesota against Arizona also, and the Rams against Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. So everything is recontextualizing. But I'm not going with Burrow in a one quarterback league, but we saw what he did with Chase. Chase has to be in now, the most valuable Bengals receiver. Higgins, you have to like Higgins against these corners. And then we have Boyd. And Boyd, it may well be that his value only comes with the high volume games. And I don't think Chicago and Andy Dalton are going to run away from Cincinnati and render this meaningless, the run game, which brings us around to Joe Mixon. And see, when you talk about Joe Mixon, I just think Samaje Perine. I mean, everybody needs to familiarize themselves with the name. Waiver wire speed dial, because he can probably step in and be 70, 80% of Mixon in this balanced offense. And there's a real chance here, Cease, for the Bengals to start out 2-0. I know we talk about the Bengals are the fourth team in the division, but they can start out 2-0. That's probably better than anyone except the Steelers, obviously. And there's just no reason this team can't at least turn the corner. It's beating teams like Chicago, like Minnesota, that show at least you're out of the basement.
It's like the tournament in Karate Kid, right? I would also say Mortal Kombat. So pick one where you're just trying to
go up the ladder.
Mountain, go up that ladder. And if you're Cincinnati, with the way that you started in the second data point game, if you continue on that trajectory, you can leapfrog the Steelers. Sure. I know they beat the Bills, but again, we'll get to the Steelers a little bit later. Let's stick with this game and revenge game for Andy Dalton. I don't know. Allen Robinson will have better coverage this week, so he should be able to do some things. Of course, David Montgomery, it's what he does, right? He's going to get barely 100 yards. That's fine. This is what the Bears are, and I guess all of us wait for more now with more Justin Fields. Imagine if this game was Fields. You know what I mean? Like Fields versus Burrow. That's exciting and less exciting with Andy.
Yeah, this is a revenge game, though, against the Bengals. We'll talk about week one, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, Ryan Tannehill and the Titans. Just throw those results out. Let's start over in week two. Do we do that with the Bears? And this offense, we just expected it to not be good. The one thing that went against that, of course, was David Montgomery. Now, this Bengals run defense was pretty tough on the Vikings, on Dalvin Cook. Cook had to earn everything he got last week. So we'll see if Montgomery can produce against this defense after how they looked against Cook last week. Then maybe it's just not going to matter, especially he's going to get a boost when Fields eventually comes in. And that's what we're going to watch here with Dalton. Cease. It's that doomsday clock. When is Fields going to get in? But you got to put Robinson back in your lineup. No Jalen Ramsey. Darnell Mooney is at least an upside what the heck flex here. And we'll see about Cole Kmet, who is clearly ahead of Jimmy Graham. But the background here for the Bears, and see, this is the odd lurch that they're in. I mean, everybody's just waiting for Justin Fields. The season really begins when Justin Fields comes in. Is this team distracted because of that? You know, this also, remember, is a team that's got some problems at offensive tackle, so we'll see how that Bengals pass rush can do. But again, as a Bengals fans out there have to be feeling good about where their team is. See, this is kind of like where the Browns were a few years ago with Baker Mayfield, where you know they're not going to make the playoffs, but you want to make winning a habit.
Make winning a habit and be a tough out.
Yeah.
There's your baseball reference, Bloom, I suppose. Anyway, it's rare that I do that. It's rare that we talk good about the Houston Texans. What? But this time going against the Browns, okay? Beating up on Jacksonville is one thing. Doing it against the Browns is something completely different. So the backfield's a mess. Every back scored. Again, it was against Jacksonville. Who cares? You have trust of Mark Ingram or Phillip Lindsay or David Johnson? Like, seriously, is that it? Are you trusting any Texan? regardless of their week 1 performance. Right. Now it's on the road against Cleveland. This is going to be a different story.
Yeah. And that's the thing here. Cease, we're always framing what we see based on our assumptions about the contributing factors. And Jacksonville is probably the worst team in the league in week 1. Fair?
Yeah.
32 out of 32.
Yeah.
So how can you really feel like any of these offensive results were valid? And I'm not saying Cleveland's defense is good. I mean, they're a middling defense. But it's not just their defense. It's the team. It's the attention. It's the unity. Jacksonville, you're just not getting that. And you can tell a story of a why, for Tyrod Taylor, those long balls to Brandon Cooks. Jacksonville's plays on those in the secondary were laughable. This is all Denver takes. Like, save this all for Denver, Jacksonville, right? Right. Mark Ingram gets to 26 carries, not that efficient, gets a touchdown because the game was controlled by Houston. Is that going to happen again? I don't think so. So, that's the second data point will Houston be more than a laughing stock? There's a bigger laughing stock than Houston right now. It is Jacksonville, but is Houston still a laughing stock, or did we see this team's going to rub two sticks together and at least hang in games longer than we expect?
Well, I think this has more to do with the Browns and how they respond, Bloom. Like, everyone's going to pick the Browns. 100% of people are going to pick the Browns. But it's how do the Browns respond? Because for me, it's like, okay, if you're truly that team, you're going to go out and curb stomp the Texans. Right. Because you're up against that sort of team. So Odell Beckham Jr., tread lightly, carefully, whatever I have to say there. Okay. And with your fantasy assets that we already know, the Jarvis Landrys and your David Njoku, he's back. And of course, those running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you're wondering what to expect. But Bloom, I'm wondering they'll win, but will they win 35-3 or will they win like 21-10?
Yeah, that's fair, and that's a good yardstick here. It's the emotional factor, honestly, more than the outcome of the game, because they shot themselves in the foot, really. This is just like the playoff losses, but you have to move on. The Browns only have themselves to blame for losing a game at Kansas City to the Chiefs. So that's good news, but it doesn't feel good. And how do they harness that energy of not feeling good? Like you said, take it out on the Texans. If you're a good team, if you're a winning team, that's what's going to happen. The headline here is Beckham. And I have to admit, Cease, I feel like the audience is so generous, right? Because sometimes I'm sure I'm obviously wrong to some people, but they're kind and they keep going. And it's because I'm emotional. Like, I want Odell Beckham to be great. I want to watch an NFL on Sundays with a great Odell Beckham that we got to see earlier in his career. So it's hard for me to give up on that. But I realized that maybe, I led myself and others into the weeds with this because it feels like an unknown, Cease. It feels like we're not sure where the bottom is. If he went out and warmed up and didn't feel good last week, when is he going to play? Hopefully this week. But when is he going to look like old Odell? Will he ever even do that again? That was very discouraging. But it opens the door for Anthony Schwartz. Every time, Cease, Spaceballs. We're going to may the Schwartz be with you every single time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a Mel Brooks tribute there. Chubb and Hunt, like you said, Cease, they're going to run roughshod over the Texans. Njoku, we're going to watch here, maybe inching ahead of Hooper. Of course, Jarvis Landry, if Beckham is out, Jarvis Landry showed us last week that he's going to be an automatic play. And that's the other side of this. We did see Jacksonville put up some offense in garbage time, basically. But we also expected the Texans defense to remain one of the worst in the league. And the Browns, just with their execution, should be able to make everything work against them.
It is the Audible. It is our week 2 preview part 1 here. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom. And we didn't get to recap the Rams and what they did, Bloom, to essentially break my heart because I was going up. What was it? Rude? Was I going against Rude, who had Stafford? And then I lost by like a point, and Fessel OG scored 200 points. He scored 201. So a little upset. It's okay. It's all right. But let's talk about the Rams and how everyone tries to make things, Elijah Mitchell's the new James Robinson. Okay, sure. Let's talk about it. Van Jefferson's the new Justin Jefferson. Like, okay, fine. Let's talk about it. So let's break this down based on a data point of one game that we have with the Rams. And we saw what Van Jefferson can do and Woods and how Stafford just fits everything. The deep ball passing. There was a number I saw about what completions of over 40 yards that Stafford already doubled what Jared Goff had last year. I may have that number wrong, but I saw it and I was like, holy crap, in one game. So we saw it with Stafford. It looked pretty good with Stafford. And now we move to Rams at the Colts. Could look pretty good for him again.
Should look pretty good, right? See, the story started. Again, I'm going to recount that when we were doing our predictions for the NFC West. I think I made everybody a winning team. And the idea is mathematically that's very, very unlikely. But man, after watching the NFC West, they're four of the best 7 teams. I don't know if all 4 will make the playoffs, but they're 4 of the best 7 teams in the NFC right now. And you saw what the Rams did. They just dismissed the Bears, and the Seahawks dismissed the Colts. And that's where these stories intersect. Stafford, yeah, no doubt. And see, again, we're looking at week 1 outcomes, and we're validating them. And the Colts defense is not going to be any tougher than the Bears, really. Again, the Seahawks showed that last week, especially through the air. Cup, we know we're going to stick with. Really, the main story here to react to is Robert Woods. And there's one of 2 paths that's going to be right here, except that week 1, even though he scored a touchdown, is the new reality with Robert Woods, and he's part of a supporting cast. Maybe a productive one. Maybe he'll have some spike weeks, but he's not worth the 4th, 5th round pick that he paid for him. And if you sell him for 80 cents on the dollar, you were smart, or it was just an aberration. And if you buy him for 80 cents on the dollar, you're smart, but he's definitely available for a discount right now. So make that decision. Darrell Henderson not available for a discount. See, I think that Darrell Henderson would go 2 rounds earlier than he went in drafts right now, the way he looked. Sony Michel still onboarding him, but I think it doesn't matter the way Henderson is playing. And lastly, Tyler Higbee. And I feel like we've been waiting this one for a long time, Cease. We had that month, December 2019, everything was good. But without Gerald Everett, it goes right back to him running a ton of routes, being an important part of this passing game, a downfield target. And if you drafted Higbee, if that was your plan at tight end, it looks like it was a very good plan. And Cease, I think the Rams can make a statement in this game. It's too early to say that teams are favorites. But if the Rams win going away on the road at Indy, then you have to say, this is a team that is honed right now. And they will be a tougher out with Matthew Stafford than they were with Jared Goff when it gets to January.
Yeah, and now Carson Wentz will look like Jared Goff this time against this Rams defense, because the Rams, if they could only have it all, and they almost do, Bloom. So now with Wentz, you're like, okay, we see what you did last week, and Michael Pittman didn't do anything. Zach Pascal had a couple of TD grabs. Okay, good. Nyheim Hines getting used plenty, sure. Jonathan Taylor doing everything, that's fine. But Carson Wentz, this is different. You're going up against this team. I don't care if you're at home. Could be a rough outing for the Colts and Carson Wentz.
It was a lukewarm day. That was how I characterize it. See, that Colts offense with Wentz. And I get it. He's coming back from the foot surgery. We're hoping for the Frank Reich reunion, really creating some good things. But like you said, it's the Rams. I wouldn't expect this to be a ceiling game or a plus game for this offense. You're still going to leave in Jonathan Taylor. He's going to remain involved in the passing game, and Nyheim Hines. And see, that's something we're going to watch too. Again, validating week 1 results. 42 snaps for Taylor, 34 for Hines. Was that they were playing from behind? Well, they're going to probably be playing from behind again. I don't know. They're at home again, though. So we'll see how that shakes out. But Hines is a PPR flex. Taylor's in your lineup, although you're still lowering expectations, ceiling expectations, certainly in this game for Taylor, if not just because of the role. And then what? Pittman's going to draw Ramsey, so you're still waiting around for him. Pascal, we're not going to go back to the well, I don't think, not against the Rams defense. This is just a kind of yawn, boring offense. We said Justin Herbert is already better than Phillip Rivers, but last year's Phillip Rivers is probably better than this year's Carson Wentz. That's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not good at all, because you're fooling yourself. Again, 20 teams in the league, fooling yourself a quarterback, and 12 teams got it right. Buffalo got it right going up against Miami, and I'm anxious to see how the Bills bounce back. I'm anxious to see how because the Bills should have beat the Steelers, and they didn't, and they're Super Bowl favorites. They're Super Bowl darlings. America can get behind the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, that's fine. We're waiting. right? I feel like Judge
Right.
Smalls. And we're waiting in Caddyshack. We're waiting. Come on, Buffalo. Come on, Josh Allen. Are you going to do what you did last year? Or are you going to do more? Or are you going to do something different? So let's step through the fantasy assets that we all know and love and trust and have rostered. You were excited to get Bills on your fantasy team when you drafted 2 weeks ago. Are you still as excited this week against Miami?
No, and maybe you should be worried. That's the thing. See, it's odd the way you lay that out. It's correct, though. I think going into week 1 among the Bills fan base, there was a lot of excitement. This idea that, again, the next step on the mountain was in view, maybe the mountaintop even. And the Steelers came out in their plucky underdog new identity and tripped them up and really stifled their offense. And again, Cease, like you pointed out, indications are they didn't really update this. The Josh Allen pass-heavy offense 2.0 doesn't look that much different than 1.0, and Miami has a pretty good defense. So, you go from, and what's odd about this is they really got drummed out of the playoffs in an ignoble way. It was the AFC title game, it was Kansas City, but still, you don't ever want to go out like that. You don't want to go out like chumps. You want to go out playing your best ball, and if someone's better than your best ball, okay, hats off. That's not what happened in the AFC title game. And now they're looking at 2-0. Because these are divisional games, and Brian Flores has this Miami team basically like a street fighter. They're going to figure out some way to keep hanging the fight and maybe land that fatal blow. So with Josh Allen, you're going to probably play him for fantasy again. But if this becomes a predictable offense and Allen is corralled again, we're going to start to lose a little bit of faith. On the upside in this offense, the only thing really on the upside in this offense right now is Devin Singletary. And see, I think this one was like a, back of page 8 story in the fantasy newspaper from week 1 that Devin Singletary looked good and in the fourth quarter and on a team that needs to establish the run. So it might be right under our nose that Devin Singletary is going to have at least a running back 2 fantasy kind of year and assert his control over this backfield. And this is a game where they're going to need him to do that. So they're not predictable. Of course, you're going to play Diggs. You're going to, like Beasley here with the quality outside corners, you're going to expect the slot player, Beasley, to do well. Dawson Knox, we'll see if he can gain some momentum. But the bigger story here, sees again, goes from, wow, optimism to 0-2. And the Bills, this team is being tested, their mettle, and that really means it's Josh Allen's going to be tested.
Yeah. Bloom, we know Devin Singletary looks good, but do they know? Like, seriously, Devin Singletary didn't do anything different than what he normally does. Yet every time you turn around, it's like, let's replace him with Zach Moss. Let's not play him as much. Let's just pass all the time. Like, no, there needs to be that element. So, like, while we can see it, this is often the case in fantasy football or just in life in general, Bloom. I don't want to get too deep. If we can see it, why can't they see it?
Sure.
Okay. Take the red pill, everyone. Let's move on and go to the Miami side. I almost skipped over Miami because it's less interesting.
Sure.
But there are fantasy assets that you need to know, specifically Tua and those targets in the passing game. Let's say Buffalo does put up 30, 35, right? Miami's going to have to match that. Who, how, why?
Right. Because the meme in the hive mind cease is Mac Jones outplayed Tua Tagovailoa. That comparison was hanging in the air all offseason anyway. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith asking players about it. And Mac Jones is better than Tagovailoa. You might even say they won in spite of him. Not that his play was dragging them down to the bottom of the ocean like an anchor, but it's not like it was a rousing debut for him. Now, enter stage left Will Fuller. How much will that help things? Buffalo's defense was not the reason they lost to the Steelers, by the way. So, this is still a defense that's not going to give away anything in coverage. They're not necessarily a top-end pressure defense. They're a strong enough run defense. Certainly there wasn't much there for Najee Harris, although some of that is the Steelers' line. With the return of Fuller, can we get Tagovailoa throwing downfield, making some things happen? Something. And will Fuller's addition make it more difficult to trust Waddle, to trust Parker, who will probably draw Tre'Davious White, and then of course Mike Gesicki, putting the sick in Gesicki. You almost hope that he has another dud, so that for anybody that's holding on to him, it's mercifully they can let him go. Because if he has a big game, then it's just going to throw everything back into doubt. again. But this is a very interesting game, and especially because Miami, Brian Flores, look, he has a winning record against Bill Belichick. He has a winning record against Bill Belichick, and that's taking a team that was in the absolute bottom of the NFL over, and he has a winning record with the quarterbacks he's had, etc. So this is a guy I think that, like Belichick, can find those ways to win a game where you're overmatched. I think in some ways they're overmatched in this game, but in other ways this is a coin flip game.
And this is the time to promote our League Dominator app and our Footballguys app. Just go to your app store, your Apple store, Google Play Store, what have you, and search for Footballguys. There we are with our League Dominator. You used our Draft Dominator to draft your team. Use the League Dominator to dominate your league and to take it to the competition with recommendations and tools to help you win, save time, and worry less. That's what we're all about at footballguys.com. And really, that's the thing. I was listening to, I don't know, it was like Gary V or something, Bloom. And it was like, your customers, you have to find out their problem. And then you offer the solution. And it's like, well, our solution is time saving for you because, again, you have a life. We don't. We'll do the heavy lifting. Check out our League Dominator app. It is footballguys.com. Back to the preview show. And, well, you mentioned Belichick, and there he is. What, the AFC East going against each other this week?
Yeah, right.
I just noticed that. New England against the Jets. Okay, so let's talk about the Patriots and let's talk about Fumblerooski and if Ramondre Stevenson will get some more work or if this backfield is all Damian Harris or what's going to go on there, and then continue to get data points. It's going to be a very exciting matchup of two rookie quarterbacks and one being Mac Jones. So let's start with Jones and company on the Patriots side, Bloom.
All good returns on Jones in week one. Looking good. Everything's looking good.
On time, basically. And most rookies won't be on timeline. Like Wilson, when we get to him, Bloom, he was not on time.
Right.
But Jones was on schedule. It's a great fit for him.
Yeah, the processing's there. And I'll say I was probably too low on him. I would focus so much on play outside of structure, but the structure's there for him with this offensive line. And the secondary story here is you had Nelson Aguilar, very solid. It's the Jets, right? So if Aguilar was solid against Miami, you like him, maybe even go back to Jacoby Myers in deeper leagues. And James White was good. So it wasn't the tight ends. Now, Johnny Smith still should be someone, Johnny Smith, you should be interested in because of this soft Jets defense. You would expect the passing game to have even a better go of it than they did against Miami. The big story here, like you said, though, is the fumble issue. Ramondre Stevenson comes in and fumbles right away. But Damian Harris fumbles cease in a moment in the game, just like Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson fumbled in a place on the field you can't fumble, okay, anytime in a game. But Damian Harris fumbled in the point in the game where you just can't fumble. It's just, I mean, almost, and wasn't he carrying around the ball, right? I mean, there's layers to this, right? There's Damian Harris and where his head is with ball security, but then there's also Bill Belichick. And who knows? Belichick, Shanahan, it's this common story annually sometimes in fantasy football where we know that their decision making is not going to be linear in a way that we can predict it. And we're definitely open to this backfield flipping, even though both running backs fumbled. And certainly against the Jets, you would think they're going to have a chance to run the ball a lot. So that's the biggest fantasy story here. On the other side, Cease, if you didn't get to watch it, I mean, Zach Wilson, you see reasons for hope and you see reasons to fear what's coming for him. And certainly this week against Belichick, you definitely are leaning on the fear side.
Well, it's pressure. I mean, it was the thing at BYU when everyone he's like Pat Mahomes. I'm like, what? Huh? What world do we live in where that kid's like Pat Mahomes? Pressure at BYU just crushed him. And you saw, again, pressure in week one. Now, he did a good job when he was scrambling to his right and throwing to Corey Davis on the right side of the end zone. So if I'm picking Corey Davis, can it be like the square game for the Super Bowl, Bloom? Like, I'm going to take back right corner of the end zone, Corey Davis. I'm going to put all my chips on that, right? Always bet on black. Always bet on Corey Davis in the right side of the end zone. Always the black, never the red. That's my roulette rule, right? Always the black, never the red. Let's go. So let's talk about this and how he's going to handle said pressure. Do they perhaps try to run the ball a little bit more? Jamison Crowder should be back. Of course, had the illness. Robert Saleh saying may be available now for week 2. So we see how that changes things with another target in the passing game. But it could just be a flat out bad day for Wilson on Sunday.
Yes, when we look at Wilson and say compare him to Lawrence, right, where you could say they both looked like rookies. But in Lawrence's case, there were unforced errors and there were things where it just looked like, man, he's going to have to really tighten a lot of stuff up. With Wilson, it was more like you didn't even get a chance to evaluate him, right? Because and that's the thing. So we don't want to hold that against him too harshly, although it is something that we don't like to see happen for a quarterback his rookie year. And it's going to get worse with Mekhi Becton hurt. Okay, it's going to get worse. And you know that Belichick is going to show Wilson looks that are going to give him brain freeze and give the defense that hesitation moment to put the clamps on him. And so this is going to be a rough one for him and because of that. That being said, Corey Davis, you saw what he was able to do, that connection, the preseason narrative, just carrying over to the regular season. One of them an extended play, one of them a garbage time touchdown. And you think there'll be opportunities for those because Wilson's not going to back down. What you like seeing in Wilson, there's no back down in him at all. And it may get him killed on the field at some point, but there's no back down in him. So that's good for fantasy. That's good for garbage time. Elijah Moore, another one of those young receivers who got the snap opportunity but didn't get the production. I'm not ready to move on from him quite yet, not after all of the momentum he had generated. The running backs, we're not even going to talk about the running backs. And see, again, I'm not holding it against Wilson. At most quarterbacks in the NFL are not good against pressure. Okay, that's not to take anything away from Wilson. In fact, you would say overall, Wilson's report card for week 1 is better than we would have expected. Week 2, this is a harder test. And you just hope he doesn't fail.
And fail miserably.
Right.
That's the thing. San Francisco and Philadelphia up next. And very interesting conversation because everyone's spending money on Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
That's fine. He's this year's James Robinson. But is it for a week? Is it for a month? Is it for 16 more games? Like, okay, windows, Bloom.
Yeah.
The windows with Elijah Mitchell. For me, it comes down to, did Trey Sermon learn his lesson? There's him and Brandon Ayuk, right? That's the conversation. Like the team sending a message. Hey, you're hurt. I'm not hurt. You're hurt. Let's see how they respond. It adds a layer of drama. It adds a layer of uncertainty, though. Even though, let's say you spent all your money, you swung your sword, you got Elijah Mitchell, you're so happy. And now you look at this game and go, did I get the right 49ers back? Kind of sounds like a theme we've talked about before.
Yeah, it does. It does. But again, as I said on the waiver wire show, as I said on the couch, there's only a few, 2, 3, 4, maybe true difference makers on the waiver wire every year. And when you're looking for the potential difference maker, you're looking for the alignment of situation, opportunity, and momentum. And that's what you have in Elijah Mitchell. So, most of the spending we're going to do is speculative spending on opportunity that we haven't quite seen fulfilled the way Mitchell fulfilled it in week 1. But yeah, Philly's run defense really tightened up against Atlanta last week. So, for both of these teams, right? So this is what's interesting about this matchup. For both of these teams, you really don't take what happened, just like Jacksonville and Houston. You don't take what happened in week 1 seriously, right? It's Detroit. It was Atlanta. Now, how are these offenses going to measure up against an actual defense? That's what we're going to watch here. And, in terms of Philadelphia, what we are looking for, San Francisco, is Jimmy Garoppolo. Everything came easy for Jimmy last week. It's not going to come as easy against Philadelphia. Like you said, Hasty, Sermon should be active. Now, Sermon's not active this week. Oh, man. He probably barely made the team, honestly, if he's a healthy scratch the first 2 weeks in. And you remember Kerryon Johnson signed the practice squad there. Ayuk, this is real drama playing out in front of our eyes, right? Publicly with this Ayuk thing. And that's the difference between Ayuk and Sermon, is there was a little more explicit explanation about Ayuk, okay? And we can remember what happened with Dante Pettis once you fall out of favor here. So just stick with Debo in this one, especially because the way they use him. I mean, I'm not worried about Darius Slay or any kind of coverage. He gets open by design. He gets open by the play execution. So we're going to measure the San Francisco offense with Jimmy. I think that unlike Dalton and Fields, we didn't start the clock last week on Lance, Jimmy, because it was Detroit. We may start the clock this week.
Yeah, well, and Jimmy got the message. We'll see if Ayuk gets the message. And the same thing with Sherman. Samwise, who's quickly today becoming one of my favorite in the chat room. He's like, do you believe the narrative that Sherman was flat out played by Mitchell? No, I don't. No, I don't. Now, do I believe that some players, and yes, I know lots of people on that coaching staff, but I'm not going to say specifically what they've told me, but I will say this. There are times when guys just are flat out worked. You know the other guy's better, and you know that plays a part in it, Bloom. Like there's expectations. But this other kid is just flat out working him. Yeah. Well, what are you going to do as a coaching staff? You're going to go with the guy that you know's good, but he might be a little lazy? Or are you going to go with the guy that's out working him?
See, well, it also is like, and by the way, on fantasy day, just play Mitchell. I mean, just don't overthink this. If you're going to play one, play Mitchell.
Right. You spent everything to get him. Play him.
Just play him. And Sermon, maybe what the heck flex. It depends on what we hear out of practice this week. So I'm sure Kyle Shanahan will get more questions about that. But see, also, it's like parenting, right? It's like parenting because you can look at a player. So this is hypothetical, okay? But I think it speaks to what coaches are considering, especially with rookies at the beginning of their career, right? Because you can look at a player and say, you can be great if you leave this whatever behind you. And if you judge that sending that message early in the career is a way to get a player's attention and maybe help him get over that hump to greatness, then you have to do that even if you know that player's better than the player you're playing over him, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. I mean, the way you handle these players, the way you send messages, because one of the things we have to keep in mind, see, so I feel like I just want to make one of these speeches that go back to one of our original missions, watching some of the players getting carted off in week 1, okay? Not playing hurts. It hurts, man.
These guys are competitors.
Yeah, there might be a few players out there that are just collecting paychecks. I don't know. But you do all the prep. You do everything. Like you make all the sacrifices of your time and your life so that you could get to play football, right? I mean, we see guys getting carted off and you see that what is going through their head. Carted off in week 1, specifically carted off in week 1, because there's so much anticipation for the season. There's so much anticipation how you and all your brothers on the team are going to pull together and make something special happen, and everything that lies ahead, and to be denied the chance to be part of that journey, you can see the hurt on the players. And then for Trey Sermon to take away that opportunity in week 1 in a way that, I mean, Kyle Shanahan's not daft. He knows that this is going to draw attention. Mm-hmm. He understands exactly what he's doing.
He's Mike's son, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Apple tree and all that good stuff. So, it's going to be interesting to watch this play out. And on the other side, Cease, this Philadelphia team's been a soap opera since last year. Yeah. And the soap opera continues. So this is a really intriguing matchup.
Well, and you mentioned Hurts, who, I mean, fans are getting behind. Was jersey sales through the roof? I think I saw that floating around the other way. But let's talk about the sales of your fantasy team. And, of course, Jalen Reagor and Devontae Smith getting in the end zone. Miles Sanders doing his thing. Zach Ertz is banged up. Nobody cares. Dallas Goedert there. But it really comes back to Hurts. Mm-hmm. And what the 49ers defense do to contain Hurts, make him make plays from the pocket, minimize the usage of his legs. Mm-hmm. We'll see how that shakes out Sunday.
And this team pretty much held Detroit in check when the game was in question. Again, this is not Atlanta, Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts wasn't challenging the defense downfield. Jalen Hurts wasn't exactly filling the air with footballs in a way that made you think, wow, he can take apart this defense. I think it was a good game plan, and he executed it well, but you have to come up with a better game plan to checkmate San Francisco than Atlanta. You're probably still going to go back to Hurts. Sanders looked good, even though he's got like a 2/3, 1/3 share with Kenny Gainwell. Gainwell should be added in typical leagues. Smith is obviously the guy you're going to play here. When the game really was hanging the balance in the first half, Smith was excellent. Rager's touchdown came game more in garbage time. Watkins got that early burst. He's kind of like the young receivers that we just want him to give us a reason to keep him on the roster if he's even on the roster. Like you said with Ertz, we're watching the hamstring. Goddard's touchdown maybe was a touchdown. It wasn't like it was a dominant performance for him. I'm not sure I'm going to either Eagles tight end here. Again, sure, the Philly offense looked pretty robust for fantasy production, but it was Atlanta. We may come back to earth with a thud here, and the Philly fans, they're going to be ready, Cease. They're going to have those boos cocked and loaded and ready.
That's exactly right. Speaking of ready, and I feel like we should have some sort of gentleman's bet with our pot stoner degenerate Jason there in Greeley, right? Because he's always talking about coming in Raiders. Yeah, Raiders and Steelers to wrap up part 1 of the week 2 preview here on the Audible. And well, what Raiders team are we going to get? First off, it's the Steelers defense. So I hope nobody picked up Zay Jones. I want you to send me a tweet at Cecil Lammey, because Twitter is the most important thing ever. If anyone in your league picked up Zay Jones, because I want to publicly shame them. So, like, are we going to get the overtime Raiders, or are we going to get the first 3 quarters Raiders? It's against the Steelers, Bloom. I have a feeling your Raiders stock.
Yeah.
Summer stock. Your Raiders stock will not be doing so good on Sunday.
The Raiders passing game was great against the Ravens. Well, before I get into that, what am I doing, Cease?
What's up?
We just got to mention the immaculate reception. I mean, it's the Raiders Steelers week.
Yeah, of course.
We have to mention the immaculate reception. We just have to. I mean, it's one of the greatest plays, not just in football history, in sports history, right? You come fly into Pittsburgh. They have the statue next to George Washington.
Next to George Washington.
Picking the ball off the turf.
Yeah.
It was really the moment. It's the immaculate reception because it was the moment that the Steelers dynasty was born, really. And Steelers Raiders, man. I mean, that's classic 70s football. And I'm not quite old enough to say I can remember firsthand watching 70s football, but the glow of it was still around when I was becoming an NFL fan.
Well, it's the NFL films that we grew up watching,
yes.
right? It's
John
Facenda and the Autumn Wind and yes, that's why.
Yeah. So Steelers Raiders week, baby. Like you said, propositions, wagers, all kinds of good stuff. Derek Carr's going to throw a lot, which it's certainly going to be good for Darren Waller. Might lead the league in targets this year. Bryan Edwards, Hunter Renfrow. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting pulled back in, right? Because the Steelers finding their identity in week 1 makes me think Steelers coming home opener. You're going to see them really feeding off of the energy of the crowd, and you're going to see the best Steelers defense, which is already coming in very hot. I'm probably not going to go with Josh Jacobs. I know he got the 2 touchdowns, but otherwise he was gimpy. You're on the road against the Steelers. No, if I'm going to play a Raiders running back, it's going to be Drake, who was very involved in the passing game.
Yeah, he's a what the heck flex for me this week because of that role.
Yeah, ahead of Jacobs. But this is the Steelers defense. The Steelers defense made their statement in week 1. And the Ravens defense, remember, was missing some corners. So I would expect this not to be a big game. Derek Carr may throw 50 times, and it might be there in PPR leagues for his targets like Waller and Renfrow, but I don't expect there to be a lot of scoring for the Raiders.
Speaking of someone always in my lineup, there's Joe Everett, man. What's up, Joe? One of the best dudes out there, and a great cellist. I believe it's the cello, right, Joe? Correct me if I'm wrong, but yes. A great musician. So great time here in the chat room. Oh yeah, we got to talk Steelers side. Why am I so negative about the Steelers? Like, seriously, like every time I bring up the Steelers, I'm like, sure, they beat Buffalo, but can they do it again? Like, oh God. All right. So it has been, and Najee just crap the bed. I mean, just sorry, Joe. Sorry, YouTube. Potty break, whatever. Like, no, Najee Harris was awful. He wasn't bad. He was awful. And again, I'm the guy that took Najee at the end of the first round in any chance that I could. I was the guy that was upset that I didn't get Najee in Fessel OG, but it's 2 QBs. So I went back-to-back QBs. Anyway, let's talk about it, man. Because I mean, Juju is such a great human being. I just don't like him as a player. And I feel bad because they'll show like a Juju highlight and I'll be like, yeah, and I know he's a good person, right? And that's the main thing of all of this. We get to play in the sandbox. Hey, football, woo! Yeah, just be a good person. But man, I just don't like him as a player. Deontay Johnson, you're like, just stay healthy.
Right.
And don't drop passes, and he didn't, right? He had the gamesman-like effort, Bloom, is that what we call it?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I just wish I wasn't so damn negative about our beloved Steelers, but here we are.
Oh, Cecil. It's okay. Again, I think what you can embrace here is a return to the defense. It's a return to we're going to win this.
Which
fights.
Works if Harris is the man and not
right.
a guy
So
who's a plotter.
Let's go with Harris. Okay. So yeah, you're right. Okay, let's talk about Harris because the reality is this. I won't say he was awful, Cease. I'll say he looked ordinary. In NFL terms, he looked ordinary.
Which should be awful for a first-round running back.
Which is awful for a first-round, right, for a first-round. Because you take a running back in the first round for one reason and one reason only, Cease.
Yeah,
because he adds value. Because he
like
adds
Saquon
value.
Barkley when he was a rookie and everyone's like, why you take a running back that high? And then you're like, oh my God, this dude's the stuff.
Right. So with Harris, and Harris is competent, very competent. And this is the situation where running backs don't matter. Well, running backs don't matter in some ways is based on the proposition that running back production is a product of environment and not so much a product of the back. That's why if you take a back in the first round, it has to be somebody who can add yards, create yards, whether with elusiveness or breaking tackles or speed, some sort of creativity. And Harris just looked ordinary. And an ordinary back in a good running game may rack up a ton of yards. He could be a 1,500, 1,600 yard back in a good running game, right? But he's not going to add anything if it's not there. And it's not going to be there behind the Steelers' offensive line. At least it's not Alejandro Villanueva. Still a tackle, though, the way he was pass blocking, or at least attempting to pass block. So Harris, same proposition as Robert Woods. It might be the smartest thing to trade him right now, where you're not going to get draft value, but if you get 75 cents on the dollar, you're going to cash in. Or it might be the smartest thing to trade for him. That I don't know about. He could get the production because the Steelers are a winning team, right? He could get the production because the Steelers are going to have more winning game scripts. And that's what we're going to watch here, because if the Steelers defense is good, it's going to hold down Carr, which in turn is going to allow Ben Roethlisberger to stay conservative, stay in his comfort zone, what he has left at this point. And the volume is just not there to support these guys, Cease. Deontay Johnson had a tremendous, amazing touchdown last week, and that's why he was an okay play. But otherwise, that's it. And Chase Claypool looked just as impressive physically as he looked last year. He almost had a touchdown. He ran one inside the 10 on his one touch on the ground. But they're not going to throw downfield. They're not going to take chances. Job one is no turnovers on defense. On offense. Don't put the defense in any kind of bad spots. So this passing game isn't really that exciting to be part of in fantasy football right now. Harris isn't that exciting. See, this Steelers offense, because the defense is good, is one of the most boring fantasy offenses. And if they can't do it against the Raiders this week, I think that's just where we're at. So I guess I didn't really cheer you up, did I?
Where it's at. Two
turntables and a microphone.
See, that makes me happy.
Beck.
Right? Yeah. Where we can play some Beck. Let's do that. That just makes me happy. Let's do that. I get a refill on coffee, and that is a wrap for our part 1 of the week 2 preview here on the Audible. We'll be back tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock Mountain Time, or whenever my coffee's done brewing. He's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible, and I'm at Cecil Lammey. And if you love the show, you support the show. You go to footballguys.com. Upper right-hand corner says, join us. Join now. Well, please do that. You love the show. If you want to support the show, that's the best way. Get your Football Guys subscription. I know it's week 2. Maybe week 1 didn't go your way. Jump on with us in week 2. It's fine. Again, we'll do the heavy lifting. We do the work. You do the winning. Save time. Worry less. It is footballguys.com. And if you want to dip your toe, want to see what we're about, maybe you're a new viewer, thank you for that. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel, Football Guys TV. Then you sign up for our free daily newsletter. Every day, the top stories right to your inbox, hot and fresh, with commentary and opinion from me, Sigmund Bloom, and Joe Bryant. That is a hell of a trio. Can you just say heck of a trio, buddy? Anyway, he's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We are the Audible, everyone. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.